are usually called gods, lowercase g, in the singular sense, or in the case of where we have male-female parity, goddesses as well, gods and goddesses, whatever. And in the case of, and there's of course the special case where we have the, now most of philosophy of religion is concerned about the last one, God, not gods or goddesses, and it's concerned with a specific popular religious position called classical theism, and I'll discuss that in a bit. Now, let's quickly go to the second question, the basic positions. And in my opinion, there are three basic positions. And as I explained there are two metaphysical positions, and one is an epistemic or epistemological position. And first of all, I should, I guess, briefly explain what I mean by a metaphysical position and an epistemological position. When I say that something's a metaphysical position, that means it has something to do with the fundamental nature of reality, or the existence of things, or the nature of the world, like what exists, or what not. Okay, alright, what is out there, alright, okay. And an epistemological position is basically a stance taken on the knowledge of things, and the nature of that knowledge. And I guess, in some sense, it can be argued that everything is really a metaphysical stance, because really everything has to do with the nature of reality. So, in some sense, the epistemic is subsumed under the metaphysical, but I'm using the term metaphysical in the sense as it's been used by philosophers and theologians for centuries. And it has certain nuances and connotations that separate it from the field of epistemology. And you can see this immediately if you look at the prima facie differences between metaphysical questions and epistemic questions. Metaphysical questions would be things like, why is there something rather than nothing? Or, do universals, in other words, general abstract concepts, exist? Are they real, or are they simply names? Second is, do we have free will, and what does it mean to have free will? Another one would be, is my mind separate from my body, or are they really identical, or so on and so forth? Okay, but epistemic questions are totally different, at least prima facie. For instance, epistemic questions concern the nature of justification. For instance, is my justification ultimately stemming from internally within me, in other words, position of internalism, or does my justification have to depend on something external, externalism? Okay, are my beliefs, do my justifiers, the beliefs that justify other beliefs, ever end? Is there an infinite regress of justifiers? Do justifiers ultimately justify themselves, that is, all belief is ultimately circular? Or do we immediately end at some axiomatic foundation where we base all our justifiers upon, all our justifications upon, and that base foundation is itself non-justified and simply can't be justified? Or, for instance, skepticism. Is there a world out there? Can I know anything about the world? Can I know anything at all? Or how do I justify anything? Do I just simply use the faculties of reason alone? Do I go through logical steps and think, okay, this and this and this, and therefore the world as it is? Or do I have to actually approach the world itself and then study it, rather than sitting detached and reasoning purely to truth, but instead that I study the world and then come to truth, and so on and so forth. So the epistemic isn't really part of the metaphysical insofar as the word metaphysical has been traditionally used. And that's not to say that metaphysics is eliminable with respect to epistemology. And I mean, many philosophers agree that you can't really do epistemology without good metaphysics. I mean, without stuff to know in the first place, epistemology would be a non-starter. So, okay, my usage of the term metaphysical is made to draw the distinction between the positions I'm going to talk about: theism, atheism, and agnosticism. As you can probably guess, theism and atheism are the two metaphysical positions here. Agnosticism is a single epistemological position. And before I continue, I want to make a brief technical point. I hope you don't get too sidetracked by that, but this is really important. I think the positions theism, atheism, and agnosticism are properly construed in a relational manner. That is, one is a theist or an atheist or an agnostic with respect to a belief system, with respect to conceptions of the divine entities. Okay, let me give an example. Okay, all Christians do not believe in Allah. Okay, like Allah is of course related to Christ the Lord in the sense that the concepts of these two entities share a common root, the Abrahamic religions, but these two entities are of course dissimilar. In the same way, Muslims do not believe in Christ the Lord. That is, they don't believe in a God who is triune, or that God essentially incarnated himself as a man who is fully man and fully God. Right. So, if we want to be technical here, we could say that Muslims are theistic with respect to Allah, but they're atheistic with respect to Christ the Lord. And vice versa with Christians. Christians are theistic with respect to Christ the Lord, but atheistic with respect to Allah. So what I mean to say, as you can see, that theism, atheism, and agnosticism are relational positions. And I think this distinction is well worth making, because I want to be very precise here. For instance, and the reason why I'm going to do this will come up in later videos. You'll see why eventually. And I want to anticipate one misunderstanding. I'm not making the rhetorical claim that, for instance, I'll just quote, like Stephen F. Roberts once said that, "I contend that we are both atheists. I just believe in one fewer God than you do. When you understand why you dismiss all the other possible gods, you'll understand why I dismiss yours." And Richard Dawkins has once said, "We are all atheists about most of the gods that humanity has ever believed in. Some of us just go one God further." I'm not making that point here. I'm just trying to make a brief technical point about the relational nature of these positions. I'm not endorsing those statements in some way, in any way right here. It's dialectically ineffective for any sufficiently sophisticated theist in any case, so it's just a useless point in this context. Anyway, now let's move on to the definitions that I'm going to propose for theism, atheism, and agnosticism. Theism, I would define it as the position that God, capital G, exists, or that gods, lowercase g, plural, exist. And there are, of course, innumerable varieties of theism. There are thousands of religions, literally tens of thousands, extending far back into the mists of time, from the ancient animists to the henotheists, to the polytheists, to the monotheists of today. Just so many religions, okay? And they can generally be summed up into three different categories. Insofar as for this video, I'm not going to go into so much detail. I mean, yeah, religion is extremely intricate, but we don't really have time to get into that. There's monotheism, polytheism, and finally there is henotheism. Now, monotheism is the belief that exactly one and only one, there's not 2 or 3 or 0, okay? Exactly one God exists. And the usual formulation of this is in the form of classical theism, as I'll discuss later. And this is the dominant position in the world today, and it has been probably, besides polytheism by the Indian philosophers who preceded the Greek philosophers and some of the works of the pre-Socratic Greek philosophers, from the Socratic philosophers onward, it's probably been the most discussed view of religion by